Hi, welcome back to the Self-Love series with Dr. Jennifer Hawks. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of those secret wounds. So, some of the wounds that you will not see as wounds, and it's not something that's even a deeper wound that is going to be uncovered as you look at it. It's going to be something that's even secret to yourself, right? It's going to be something that has been suppressed. And what we really want to look at here is the secret wounds will come out when you are finally ready to handle that and to process that. This comes up very frequently with dreams. So, a lot of people that will have reoccurring dreams, that will have night terrors, and they won't necessarily remember everything, or the dream won't make sense to them. These are typically some level of suppression that our brain is actually unlocking some of those folders of what those secret wounds were. And your brain's going to keep that locked away from you until you're ready to handle it. And when you're actually ready to face some of those secret fears and secret wounds, then it will represent itself to you in this lifetime. When you look at work with patients that have PTSD, or when I work with patients that have had major traumas in their early childhood or even any time in your life, doesn't have to be childhood. If you've had some of those major traumas and you were not in a place in your life where you could actually process that, heal from that, handle that, your brain is going to do you a favor. It's going to lock that away somewhere. You're going to suppress it, and because you're just not ready to handle it yet. You're just not ready to deal with that. And like I said, this often comes up with PTSD. This will often come up with overall suppression of emotion. So, for example, I see this a lot with people that are grieving. And if they didn't actually process that grief, it'll keep, presenting itself until you do. Well, some people will go years and from what I understand, even lifetimes, without actually processing some of those suppressed emotions that have caused deeper wounds and blockages for us that we're just not ready to handle yet. If it presented itself any earlier, then it may be too much for us, and we will not be able to handle that at the time. So the brain's going to do you a favor. They're going to lock that away in a little folder somewhere in your brain. And when you start to become ready, it's going to present itself in little ways. So as I mentioned, it will often come up as night terrors and reoccurring dreams. So let's say you have this really weird dream that you constantly have and it doesn't quite make sense, and you just write it off, right? Like, I don't even know what that means. If it continues to present itself, I want you to actually start to write down what you do remember from those dreams or from those night terrors, because as it continues to present, it's going to unlock little bits at a time. And when you're completely ready to be able to handle that, then you can process it. I have a patient of mine that I have not seen this person in years, but I had a patient that was having a lot of reoccurring dreams about his grandmother. Now, his grandmother passed when he was little, and he had not quite unlocked everything that happened surrounding his grandmother's death. As those reoccurring dreams kept coming up for him, we realized that he was always waking from the dream at a particular time with a particular sensation of feeling guilty. And then he just didn't know what it meant. He knew his grandmother passed when he was little, but he just didn't know what it meant until eventually that folder in his brain completely unlocked and shed some light on that past trauma. And so for him, it was a secret wound that was surrounding guilt. He had a lot of guilt surrounding his grandmother's death, but he could not put a finger on it. He knew he had those dreams. He knew that he felt guilty and he had this reminiscence of his grandmother when he would wake up. But it was a secret wound. It was not something that his brain was completely consciously making him aware of until it did. So this particular person had come into the clinic and I was working as an intern at the time, and I had treated him as an intern. He was not part of my private practice. And he told me that the dream had finally started to unlock. And so we were going through everything to try to piece it together for him so that as his brain was making him aware of what actually had happened in the past, that he had suppressed this memory. This was a tragedy in his family's life that when it actually happened initially, it was not going to go well for him to try to process that. So his brain actually completely blocked the memory. And then as he was in his later teen years, he started having reoccurring dreams. And then when I actually saw him, he was in his early 20s, and he was having more vividly the same reoccurring dream with new pieces being unlocked, new details. So as it came out, he actually remembers that that I forget exactly how the situation was set up, but basically he he was trying to get into his own house where he lived with his grandmother and his mother. He was trying to get into his house. He was very young. He remembers knocking on the door, and he remembers hearing a large, like, thud, like several thud, like noises, like boom, 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 boom. And in his past, he had thought maybe that was what he was hearing from him knocking on the door, right? So the dream really didn't make sense to him. Or to anyone else he tried to explain it to, for that matter, right? Because the brain had locked away those details because it was a protective mechanism and it was a secret wound. It was something that his brain had suppressed that actual memory and blocked that actual memory because it was not the right time for him to be able to process that. But he kept having this dream, and then it turned into having this serious sensation of guilt and just not understanding why. So as more and more of it unlocked, it was discovered that his grandmother actually passed away trying to get down the stairs to open the door for him when he was locked out. So he carried around this guilt for years about his grandmother's death and never understood why he felt guilty. Never quite got it. And it didn't present itself that way, right? It was a blocked, suppressed emotion. It was one of those secret wounds that you weren't able to handle yet. And so this was incredibly tragic for him when it finally did completely come out. And he did realize that he had felt actually responsible for his grandmother's death. And his brain was not willing to tell him everything that actually went down in that incident, because your brain is, it's working for you, right? And you are so intelligent. Your body is so smart that if you're not emotionally capable of handling something, you're going to block it out. Your brain's like, nope, you can't handle that right now. We'll readdress that at a later date and time when you're more able to, when you have a good support network, when you have the faculties to be able to handle this suppressed emotion. We're keeping this from you because you can't handle it yet. So I want you to take a look at some of those things that come up for you that maybe you haven't had a chance to heal from yet. The things that you haven't quite pieced together. Let's say some things that there was a tragic incident that happened, but you don't remember all of it. Believe me, that's a blessing. And when you are able to handle all of it, your brain will fill you in. Until then, it may give you pieces of it. But if you notice things like reoccurring dreams and night terrors and sensations that don't make sense to you, let's say you feel like you've suppressed a lot of anger about things that have happened, but you don't feel angry. You feel perfectly fine, right? Because your body actually never let you feel that anger or express that anger. It was walled off inside of you. Or if you had a serious amount of guilt surrounding something, a lot of grief surrounding something, and you just never processed it. And like I mentioned before with the grief, you'll see this a lot with people that have lost a loved one that they were really close to for a really long time, and they'll be in shock. And they won't even put it all together quite yet because they have to process it. But if you're not ready to process it, your body's going to do you a favor and it's going to kind of block that off as a secret wound that you're not going to remember until you're ready to process it. And speaking of that aspect of grief, for example, couples that have been together for a very long time, and then they lose their partner. Some of those people don't ever actually fully process the grief of losing someone that was in their life for that long. And I really hope that any of my patients, are able to process grief. And there's a lot of ways that we can help with that, with energetic healing, as well as counseling and things like that. Acupuncture is a really good way to actually unlock stagnant energy that doesn't make sense to us. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because there are going to be certain wounds that are not going to present themselves when you go looking for them because you're just not ready for it yet. And when your body and your brain and the universe says, okay, I think you're about there. I think you're about ready for us to unlock this for you. You'll start getting pieces of it again. You'll get that sensation of guilt. You'll get that memory of someone that had hurt you badly that you feel like, oh, I guess I just handled that pretty well. You may have handled it really well, or you may have actually suppressed it. And so things that we haven't healed from in the past, even if we didn't even know it was a wound, right? Things that we haven't healed from will represent themselves to us as another opportunity for us to heal. And then what's really funny is that after you think you've healed from it, it'll actually present itself again as a test to be like, have you really healed? Sometimes I laugh about that because right now it is actually Mercury retrograde, and it is right now the perfect time in the universe for some of those things that you have been working on to learn your lessons to do better for yourself, they're going to represent themselves as tests. That's why everyone jokes that every single one of your exes will contact you during Mercury retrograde. especially if you haven't um especially if you haven't actually learned that lesson, or if you feel like you've learned that lesson and the universe wants to test you to make sure you've learned that lesson before they bring in your next blessing. And what is really interesting about the Mercury retrograde aspect of that is it's an opportunity for us to make sure that we've actually processed and healed some of the things that we've struggled with in the past. So, of course, if you don't have any secret wounds that have come up, if there's none of those levels of suppression that really present themselves for you, great. I hope that you don't have to deal with that. But if there is something that you just haven't dealt with, maybe you don't even remember it, when you are ready to process that, it will come. It will come up. And if you're someone that does have reoccurring dreams, if you're someone that does have weird sensations, excuse me, if you're someone that does have weird sensations, okay, it's time for me to clear my throat chakra, then when that actually does start to come up for you, please make sure you take a chance to look at that, to heal from that, to process that, because that is actually usually a wonderful way to jump forward to your next cycle, your next level of blessings in your life. So we're being tested with Mercury retrograde typically anyway. You'll notice a lot of other people where communication is affected, right? During Mercury retrograde. All your exes will contact you. Anything that you haven't healed from in the last cycle will represent itself. Or anything that you have actually healed in the last cycle may represent itself as a test to make sure you're ready to move forward. If you're someone that has a lot of these reoccurring dreams, take a look at it. What details has your brain put together? What people in your life are involved in this reoccurring dream? What time of night do you have that dream? If you can pinpoint that you have a reoccurring dream, and let's say it always happens to where you're waking up at 2:00 in the morning with this same reoccurring dream that doesn't make a lick a bit of sense to you. And so a lot of us will write that off because it's like, oh, it's just a crazy dream. And some of them are just crazy dreams and they don't mean, anything as far as secret wounds. But some of them are our brain actually discharging the things that we thought of that day. And as those folders start to unlock on past traumas, now is the opportunity to handle that for you. Now is the opportunity for you to heal from that, even if you never thought it was an issue. One of the things that I had when like I said, acupuncture helps. One of the things that I had when I was in med school, I had something very upsetting, tragic happen, and I started getting little tidbits to fill me in on what had actually happened. And having little bits of details come out. I don't know if this is saying I shouldn't be telling anybody this, or if this is saying let it out, girl. Okay, so I had where I started getting little tidbits. I did have night terrors about this instance that had happened, and I was getting acupuncture done, and acupuncture is incredibly helpful to anybody dealing with PTSD, hands down. please find an acupuncturist or an energy worker that can help you with that, because that is going to be a beautiful resource for you. But as those things started to unlock for me, and I was having some of those trigger moments, right? But it was just the details that I didn't remember from the actual trauma. And I remember I was taking a walk, and it was about 30 minutes after a really powerful acupuncture session that I had had. And I was taking a walk, and every detail of why I had these sensations that were popping up but didn't make sense to me, every detail of that trauma flooded through my mind. It allowed me to start to completely process that grief from the incident instead of suppressing it. And yes, I did use energy medicine. Yes, I did have a good support network at the time. And so that was helpful as well. I immediately called my acupuncturist and I just started like bawling on the phone because I was like, oh my gosh, I just unlocked everything. This is why I was having that sensation over and over that made no sense. This is why I had felt this way. This is why that physical wound was there. This is why my brain just unlocked the whole folder and flooded me with the real memories of what actually happened. So when you're ready to process the secret wounds, they will represent themselves. They will start as small details. They will start as sensations. They will start as reoccurring dreams or night terrors or little bits to be like, are you ready? Your brain's gentle with you sometimes, right? Are you ready? Can we give you more details yet? Are you ready to process this? And so when it actually does flood through and everything comes in, that's not the healing. That's just the awareness of the wound. So when the secret comes to light and you're like, oh, that makes sense why XYZ was happening to me. So if those things start to happen to you, just know that it's your body that did you a favor. Your brain was doing you a favor by not allowing you to remember those things, not allowing your folder to unlock yet because you would not have been able to handle it yet. When your brain thinks you're able to handle it, it will start coming out in small pieces until it floods in. Then you can actually do the work to heal from it and to make sure that it doesn't allow you to just be self-damaging at that point, to actually allow you to provide that self-love and that healing aspect for yourself and to rebalance your energy centers and to make sure that you actually learn a lesson from that situation, that you see clearly on what actually happened. But if you're not ready to handle that yet, your brain's not going to fill you in. So I just want to let everyone know when things like that happen, where you start having some of those weirder sensations of things that were suppressed coming back to the forefront of the brain or coming back to light, then you're ready. You're ready to process that then. It's actually a beautiful thing. And I commend anybody who's willing to do the work for themselves to better themselves, to raise their vibration. If you do have these instances happen and you need some assistance with it, or if you start having some of those sensations, reoccurring dreams, night terrors, and you want someone to help you unlock that, please reach out. I would love to help with that. DocHawks.com. And one tidbit that can help you surrounding, if it's a recurring dream or a night terror is, as I mentioned before, looking at the time. What time of night do you have that dream? What time of night do you wake in a panic? In traditional Chinese medicine, there's what's known as the TCM clock, and the different organ systems and channels in the body the meridian channels, the energy channels. In acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, it's based on different channels and meridians, so to speak. So those are active at different times of the day. If you find yourself having this same reoccurring dream somewhere between 1 to 3 a.m., like a 2 a.m. waking, oftentimes those are surrounding suppressed frustrations, suppressed anger. That is the time of the liver in the body. And the liver channel is all about ego, frustration, anger, things like that. And if you find yourself waking at that time, take a look at what you know that you may have suppressed: frustration, anger, something that was a blow to your ego, something like that. And of course, if you're not ready to handle it yet and it hasn't completely unlocked yet, take it easy on yourself, provide that self-love, don't beat yourself up. Let's say it was somewhere between 3 and 5 a.m. That's the time of the lung. Oh my gosh, well, that makes sense why I was just coughing a second ago, talking about that particular situation of mine, because that situation of mine was surrounding suppressed grief. See, we're learning every day. I'm even learning while trying to help other people with this. So, okay, that makes perfect sense why my throat chakra was trying to clear around that, why my lungs were trying to clear around that situation, because that situation was actually something of suppressed grief. Light bulb moment. Okay, so full circle here. If if that happens anywhere between 3 to 5 a.m., that's the time of the lung. The lung is associated with sadness and grief. And so when we have to where we've suppressed something that was sad, that really truly hurt us and upset us, or especially with like loss of loved ones and things like that, that's a moment of grief, right? For my particular instance, it was definitely an aspect of suppressed grief that was coming to the forefront about something that had happened in my life. And so that makes perfect sense because grief is associated with the lungs. That's something too, like after someone loses somebody close to them or someone's grieving, they may start to develop a chronic cough. They may start to develop weird things with lung health because the lung is associated with sadness and grief. So if we're not processing our sadness and our grief, then that may actually promote a stagnation of energy flow in that channel in the lung. So that actually adds several different aspects of holistic medicine together. That adds an aspect of energy work in many different rites. Traditional Chinese medicine, naturopathic medicine, Reiki energy healing, that combines a lot of those different holistic practices that involve energy medicine. So this was actually hilarious that I decided to do this video just now and had been talking to you about something that I had suppressed that finally unlocked in me. And it was surrounding a suppressed grief situation. And at first in my head, I'm thinking, oh, is that my throat chakra telling me like, oh no, hold on, what are you doing? That was the lung. That was the lung and the suppression of the grief and the sadness that I was trying to make sure I continue to heal from. And that was one of those secret wounds for me. So take a look at some of that stuff for yourself. Like I said, if you want any assistance with it, please reach out. But this section of the series was all about the secret wounds. So to sum that up, a lot of us will have wounds and blockages that we're unaware of that maybe stemmed from trauma in this lifetime, even in another lifetime, even in past lives. Maybe we've had blockages for lifetimes. So as things start to unlock for us, as the brain starts to fill you in on the details of what actually happened, what actually went down, that's a blessing. That shows that you're actually now ready to heal from that. You're now ready to process that. And if you hear anyone talk about grief, anyone that's a grief counselor, anyone that talks about grief, they'll tell you grief comes in waves. Why does grief come in waves, you think? Because of what we just talked about. As you slowly heal from each and every level of grief, it'll unlock new things for you to release, for you to heal from and work on when you're ready. So as we grieve something, as we unlock, previous frustrations and previous things that should have elicited anger in somebody, but they suppressed it, then we're actually looking closer at the secret wound. We're shedding light on what actually happened, and we're opening up an aspect of us that we were unaware of. So, self-love, thank your body for the alerts that it gives you. Don't write your body off. Don't suppress emotions. If you knowingly are suppressing emotions, then please get support on that. But for a lot of this, it's those secret wounds, right? We don't realize we're suppressing it. Our brain actually blocked out certain aspects of that. Our brain's not going to let us remember every aspect of it until we're ready to process it. And then watch for when that comes back up, because it's an opportunity to either now completely heal from it or to, take that next level of processing. Or is it something that your brain's just now filling you in on? Take the opportunity when your body tells you something. Listen to the body when it whispers so you don't have to hear it scream. It's one of my favorite quotes, actually. And if it is something that is slowly unlocking for you, please don't suppress that back down. It's trying to come out for a reason. That means you're now ready to handle it. You're now ready to process it. So thank your body for the alerts it gives you. Pay attention to what your body is saying to you, and pay attention while it's just talking to you normally. If you don't pay attention when the body's just talking to you normally, you're going to hear it scream. Things manifest and become bigger and bigger and bigger problems when we continue to suppress things. So just appreciate yourselves. Know that we're all healing. We're all working on, trying to be our best selves and being high vibing. And when your brain starts to fill you in on some of those secret wounds, pay attention. It may just be exactly what you need to reach that higher level of attunement, to unlock, to process, and to release even things that we had no idea we were holding on to. You guys take care of yourselves. Have a beautiful day. And of course, once again, please, if you think that this series is going to help anyone, I would love it, love it, love it if you would like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you need anything from me, please reach out personally. And you can always check out the website, doccox.com. See you guys.